Chapter 3. I returned to the shindig, sat my sorry ass on a stool, and flagged the bartender with the vigor of a hitchhiker headed for Vegas. Time to start rolling stones. Plan? Get blind-ass drunk, hoping the pure-grain gin would act like steel wool on brain crevices. Voodoo gin. They say it lets you talk to God, or at least some God, somewhere. Maybe after a fifth of voodoo I could get to asking God if he'd mind getting around to sending a woman my way. We all got to think a Creole fellow named Hagon Nest, who laid claim to an estate loaded with red cedars, a type of juniper tree. One of the few New World businessmen, Hagon built a fine brand using the trees to make fence posts, longbows, and the tastiest damn spirit this side of the moon. And if you ever wanted to make some extra jingle, Hagon paid good for glass jars. This gave rise to the jarheads who scavenged high and low for pickle, mayo, vinegar, empty liquor and beer bottles, whatever they could find or steal. Breaking a glass jar these days was tantamount to beating a crippled child with a 2x4. Funny how things like containers become more valuable than precious metals when civilization is broken down. Matt Sawyer wiped a mildewed rag across the top of the bar while peering at me through the slits of his black plastic mask. Back in the yonder days, Matt had been a firefighter, a real genuine American hero of the classic variety. Man rushed into burning buildings swinging an axe and hauling poor folks out of the smoldering ruins of their own homes. Matt was in one of them burning infernos back in '74, right up on the second floor where he was giving his all to save a little boy's life. Pulled one of them Hollywood moves. Tossed the boy out the window where he got caught by other firemen below, so the story goes. But rafters in the attic came tumbling down, one taking a big old swipe at Matt's face, leaving him a charred mug. Of course, they got him to the hospital and he was scheduled for reconstructive surgery, but the world went straight down the crapper before all the surgeries were finished. Matt might have been one of the ugliest sons of bitches you ever did see, but he had a good spirit behind that burnt flesh. A twisted, gnarled clump of skin seemingly ran down his skull, the way an egg rolls off a greased skillet. But Matt was the real deal. Spent every bit of his free time making our community better. Gave food to the ones who didn't even have a pot to piss in. Cared for the elderly and sick, too. All on his own, he helped rebuild the Wheatley's house, the worst house fire in our town's young history. Took Ed Wheatley's whole family down in a raging blaze. His wife Mariam, his 10-year-old son Danny, and his 4-year-old daughter Nancy. Ed didn't want the home rebuilt, but Matt wouldn't have no can of beans from him. Took Matt and the rest of us who chipped in 3 months to get the house back up. That entire time Ed sat on the remnants of the old home's cement steps. He chugged bottles of voodoo and cussed everything, from the lot of us to the birds and squirrels and eventually God. Matt was a visionary, too, who knew that folks like me and the other patrons needed a cozy sanctuary from all the killing and the bloodshed and general woes of surviving day in and night out. Don't matter a bowl of dinner piss how long you've been out there clearing your leather, or how well you can channel that Bronson fella, 'cause after a good long spell of the waste world, everybody needs a sanctuary. Or else they say you crack, come what they call a gizzard. Matt shuffled over to the jukebox, plugging the cord into a wad of extensions. He hammered his fist on the old gal till some neon bulbs got to jittering, and then she really got to wailing. Gimme Shelter poured into the crud. In choreographed motions, Matt swung back from the jukebox. He grabbed a bottle of voodoo and did this fancy glide walk thing down the length of the bar till those black slit eyes were gazing at me. He hesitated, popping the black wax seal off the bottle, cocking his head in the manner of a befuzzled hound dog. "Bring me any souvenirs?" With an exhausted sigh, I nodded while rooting around inside a rucksack before placing a small cardboard box on the bar. The Aurora Toys Salem Witch figurine from the 1960s Monster Collection, mint condition. Matt nabbed the gift like a mad scientist's kooky assistant before quickly hoarding it away beneath the bar. Then he resumed removing the wax seal from the smoky-colored voodoo bottle. Matt had tasked me with locating all the Aurora monster toys for his personal collection. Strangely enough, that Salem witch had been sitting up on a cash register in a Shell station down the road a ways, just sitting there pretty as you please, as if she was holding a seance with her own self. Mighty rare to come across one of them jokers still in the package like that. It's them bewitchery times in life that gets a fella to thinking. Something bigger and a whole lot smarter than the biggest damn grizzly bear might be pulling some chains behind a curtain somewhere. Other fine folks don't show themselves at the Crud House too often, but I don't blame them. Was I a better man, I might not find myself here as often either. A bunch of drunkards and self-medicated pricks and sluts who all have one thing in common. We seek nihilism as a form of therapy. The lot of us figure to keep turning a blind eye to the reality that we're living in humanity's vilest achievement. One more swig. In the far corner rattled Strict 9, a robot-matted bot from Professor Roland Badcock. One could only imagine that Matt paid a heavy price in credits. The professor built Strict 9 from salvage metal, circuit boards, optical designator beads, sensory-grade chips, microplasma cells, Vox emulator, and magnetic audio strips. Professor Badcock built what he deemed the Leary module. The good professor got to trying to learn me on what all that meant, but he might as well have been one of them disciples. According to a little birdie, Strict 9 had first been built as a lab assistant for the professor. Or maybe the old codger got lonely, working in his garage and attic all hours of the night. Ain't that a hoot when a fella can build his own companion? Reckon Strict 9 wasn't cut out for that Frankenstein gig, since the professor got Matt to take him on. On his virgin shift, Strict 9 spilled a bottle of premium Laveau label voodoo, which right promptly demoted him to custodial and greeting duties thereafter. But what that bot was really keen on was its ability to record bar chatter, filter through the garbage, and save clips of the most important information. And for a good price, a patron of the Crud House could pay Strict 9 through a coin-operated slot. This would gain them access to some of Strict 9's audio data, depending on how much coin they wanted to fork over. Quarters were only useful for coin-op machinery, though my brothers and I had run across some merchant caravans who started using coin-ops too. The market system hadn't been restored enough for any universally accepted legal tender. Anybody in the grot who needed intel would scavenge high and low for loose change. Even if they didn't pay Strict 9 directly, they could offer the coins to a bot freak for the already deciphered information. Most unfortunately, though, Strict 9's data was limited, seeing that Badcock could only find wrecked hard drives with limited storage capacity. So if you wanted info from Strict 9, you had to stay on the ball. Or find one of the aforementioned bot freaks, people who would hang out all day at the Crud House, buy all the information from Strict 9's limited storage for it looped over, keep records of it in their own storage devices, or even on paper or whatever means they had available, then sort through it all and decipher the most relevant chatter. The best of the bot freaks would keep such organized notes that they'd even have the timestamp, the drink ordered, and who was sitting beside them at the time of the recording. If you're in the business that me and my brothers are, then you value a good bot freak who can keep detailed records. That's why we kept Trode Haskell in our circle of people we tolerated. Trode wasn't the most likable guy in town. Hell, he wasn't the most likable guy in a 200-mile radius. He was a weasel who reminded me of a 1920s gangster, or some villain yanked out of a Dick Tracy comic strip. Always had his head hidden under a bowler hat, and wore the same two suits over and over again. He was sitting in his usual spot, corner table with his tapered candle and a Collins glass. I moseyed over to his corner and took a seat across from him. He never looked up, but he'd seen me coming. "What's rattling in your noggin, Trode?"
"The price, baby, the price. Is it right? Is it wrong? Everybody got a price. What's your price?"
He never looked up. Bony, powdery fingers curled around the edge of the tabletop. Yellowed nails scraped compulsively against the grained wood. I don't want none of that. Why's it always gotta be business with you?
Look, baby, I gotta eat. We all gotta eat, baby. Yeah, baby, gonna eat tonight.
From my denim jacket, I slipped some jerky taken from the Shell station and set it on the table. Trode's slender hand snatched it up. As he chewed on the tough meat, I spotted Skull shoving people aside as he trotted his way toward me and Trode.
The bitch is here,
he said. You'll have to be more specific.
The Countess.
I got to my feet, staggering, and grabbed the table's edge. What the hell is she doing here?
Think she's got the hots for you, bro. I want to try and hit it.
Trode glanced up.
You got more. Gotta eat, baby. Gotta eat. Give me more.
Sorry. I shook my head. Fresh out.
I'll give you the rundown on the devils out of the abyss. For a price, baby. For a price.
Only gave Trode a cursory glance accompanied with a token smile. I ain't paying for campfire stories.
Ain't nothing but the facts. Just the facts. A true blue grad grind.
Candlelight reflected in Trode's sunken eyes. A desperate, greasy gleam.
Her ghouliest is waiting,
Skull said, nudging me. Without another glance at Trode, I staggered outside to face the Countess of Grot Hill.